Well, good morning, Erin.
Good morning, Arthur.
I was really excited to talk about this because you were mentioning the other day on the news about the shortage or the opportunity for how many jobs are available right now in BC in manufacturing. And I want to talk a little bit about it and then share it with all those people who are here watching.
Thanks, that's exciting. So, as you know, and maybe some of the people watching know, I consult right now in organizational development. So that can be the employee experience. It can also be establishing gaps and determining what development is required in teams to foster an accelerated change process, things like that.
Mhm.
So it's my role to understand the current climate. And yesterday in the news, they announced that there's more than 1 million open jobs in British Columbia. That seems like a really good just sort of starting point in terms of discussing skills right now.
It does, because the first thing, right, you're like, oh, manufacturing, and a lot of people don't even understand the skills that are necessary, and they might assume like there's this huge list of skills you need to start working in manufacturing,
Yeah,
when the
yeah,
reality is quite different.
very different. I mean, it really depends. In machining, you do often need to be an apprentice within a machining. Like, you can't just start running, as you know, a CNC.
Yeah.
Um, but there are some labor assembly type jobs in which, maybe English 10 is the actual requirement and some dexterity.
Mhm.
And those are very good paying jobs right now. And in fact, conversely, in 2021, at least, Indeed discovered that that's actually where the most of the open jobs are. And that's across North America. So that's an astounding metric when you consider that there's over 1 million jobs open in BC, and probably a lot of them are in manufacturing. And it might be something that people who've never considered manufacturing, could open their minds to at this point, and especially the trades.
Yeah, and it's so I mean, we're talking about entry level jobs.
Yeah.
Which obviously then leads to the point where I guess a lot of people might be looking or listening right now to us and they're thinking, okay, but that's entry level. I really don't want to be a grunt for my whole life.
Right.
So the conversation then becomes, okay, I enter and I've got my English 10 and I'm running something very basic or doing something very basic on the shop floor or perhaps in the offices. What skills, they start to look at, how do I progress?
Right.
Um,
It could be a newcomer. It could be somebody who's new to the country and
yeah,
who maybe has incredible certifications from their country, but they're not accepted by Canadian standards.
yeah.
And we find that that's actually quite common. Also, it could be somebody who is in fact at a higher level of technical ability or knowledge worker of some form. Like you and I can talk about manufacturing and engineering quite knowledgeably, but there's also healthcare. There's all kinds of industries in which in British Columbia, we do see that there's a skills gap. There's a need for people to enter into work with skills. So when you're starting at entry level and the skills aren't high, and that person wants an opportunity to move up in the ranks and make more money, it's really important for them to understand what might be expected of them and where would they get these skills? Can they get them at work? Do they have to go externally? How does this get accomplished? And yeah, that's really one of the reasons why I'm just so grateful to you that I have the opportunity to talk about the skills matrix a bit today.
Yeah, and just one other category to add to all of this is anyone that might be considering a change of industry as well. They might have relevant skills from endeavors in other categories, and now they're trying to change industries and they just want to know how they can either take what they have and apply it to where they're looking, or how do they start there to acquire more skills to grow in this new, because they're just tired of the industry they worked in.
Exactly. I mean, we did just have the great resignation, some of which is considered the great regret at this point. And we can talk about that a little bit. But yeah, do I have skills that are perhaps transferable? Which is, the catchphrase, what are my transferable skills?
Yeah.
So, for example, if you are really a passionate pattern maker for clothes, did you know that that actually is a very transferable skill for sheet metal?
I
That's
did
a
not
pretty
know.
interesting concept when trades are looking for women. They want more people to join their trades. And so that's a really great place to just start the conversation. But also, what if you've been working at a high level in engineering and you're kind of hitting this point where you're maybe you don't love managing people, but you want to become an expert in your field? How would you develop that within the company that you're in without having to leave? how can you do that? So those are all the, I think you've just made some really good points. And I just want to add that layer
Yeah.
of, can you get a way to promote yourself within the company as an expert?
Oh, exactly. And these are all things. And then, for those who are listening who haven't seen the solution that we're about to talk to that you've created, they
Right.
might think, okay, now you've got a manager who has all of their responsibilities with the company already, all the reporting, all the everything else, the management of the staff, the leadership roles, everything they already have. And now we're just going to lump on all this extra work to help identify all these skills for workers and manage what, like Excel spreadsheets, or maybe a access database, or a bunch of papers on their desk in a portafile. Like, it just seems like unfair to the management side of people that would have to manage all of this to start trying to heap on all this stuff.
You're absolutely right. I mean, actually, a thing called a skills matrix is how a lot of organizations create opportunities to evaluate their staff. And what usually happens is a manager will start with an Excel spreadsheet or an Access database, just like you described, and they'll list their people and they'll list the skills they need. And they'll use it as a selection tool for cross-functional teams, but they'll also look at it as a way to evaluate their people. Okay. And unfortunately, the manager, the first time they do it, they think, oh, this is great. And then they realize next year they've got to update it, and the year after that, and the year after that. And they've got a team that's growing, and they've got a skills list that's getting astronomical. And so how do they prevent bloat, still consider people for cross-functional teams, still have a really good, reliable assessment process? Because that's the other piece that I think is really important, is consistency there. Like, oh, I think so-and-so's a 1 or a 4. That's not really a good assessment process, right? So you're looking to nail that down a little bit and have the employees really trust it. But then how do you keep that up to date? So we looked at turning the coin on that a little bit. And we looked at creating a skills matrix that is owned by the employee. And yes, it's still a conversation between manager and employee, and the manager has the final say. But ultimately, the employee has a lot of autonomy, which we know contributes to motivation. So in many roles, especially, let's say, labor roles, processes remove all the autonomy. Like, you do not get to pick what happens first, next, or third. You don't get to choose how you're going to make this thing. This is actually, leaned down into a point where there's really no imaginative, there's no creative ability for the employee. So how do you instill autonomy back into a person's existence as an employee? So we saw an opportunity to instill autonomy in the employees, to create a system that the employees drive rather than the managers having to update all the time, that the managers still have a say, and that you're identifying those needed skills that now, going back to that 1 million open jobs, really help to super define for a manager who's looking to fill a role what it is they really need. And so suddenly the job advertisement is clarified, the role is clarified, expectations are clarified, and we have an opportunity where the employees actually have a hand in their future. And so I think this is where the tool that we've built supports managers and employees best.
As someone who was in charge of updating these in the past, that's why I am so excited. So let's
take a look.
Yeah, let's take a look.
We're calling it the skills matrix. There it is.
Okay.
I'll just open it up to the dashboard. So when you open up the skills matrix, which is a cloud-based system, so you can access it through mobile, like iPad, iPhone, or through Android, or through, just your PC and Windows. So everybody gets access to their accounts. And when you open it up, you see a dashboard where, if you're a manager, you can see who's in your team, your title, anybody else that might be sharing your title, anybody that's temporary or perhaps on probation, like a new employee in their first 3 to 6 months, and all the metrics of people who are increasing their skills. That's how growth is measured. People who have participated in training in the last, you can choose and all the self-assessments. So that's what we were talking about in terms of skills and having an employee-owned process. So there's some metrics that you can go through, and you can look over to the right-hand side to see who needs to be updating their skills. It looks like Ann Burns is behind. She's got like 2 years of catching up to do. So as a manager, you can go in and push Ann Burns to get some of her skills updated. So that's the opening. The other lens that I really like to look at from manager perspective is, once you have your team self-assessed, you might want to look at your team and determine risk. So risk is a really big part of what I do, identifying risk, identifying gaps, and seeing that you might need to, develop somebody in order to make sure that you're capable of doing the work that you promise your customers that you are capable of. So here we have a set of, let's see, 8 skills that are important to the roles within this group of people in my team. So this is the research and development team. So
Okay.
I've pulled up this list, and this may not be act like this is all just sandboxy right now.
Yeah.
So I've pulled up this pretend list of people in my team and their self-evaluations that I have approved. And I can look at my team and say, where do I need to develop my team? Where are the gaps? It looks like FMEA has a fairly big gap. It looks like I have just the one person, Anne, who's even in the blue. So there's 4 levels. Level 4 is the highest, authorized trainer. Mastering is the other blue color, which is like a level 3, needs supervision, level 2, and in training, so has only just started, is level 1. And then opportunity is for anybody that, has yet to self-assess, so our null value. So in looking cold at my team, I can see that actually I've only got 1 authorized trainer, and it's an engineering drawing, and I'm a research and development team. So that seems like that's lacking, and I have some opportunity there. Obviously, I think FMEA for research and development is pretty high need. Design review and evaluation is a pretty high need. So I'm going to pick my priorities, and I'm going to start deploying some training for my team, and that will help elevate what we're capable of doing.
Which is awesome, because it's for those that haven't got there, it's tying in that risk is, that person's sick, or that person changes jobs, or something terrible, whatever, something happens, this person's no longer available. Your department then would be at risk for FMEA. If that individual stopped coming in, you would have no one trained.
Yeah, I like to refer to it as the win the lottery scenario. We used to call it something else, and actually it was so negative that I'm not even going to say it. But literally, if Anne were to win the lottery tomorrow and off she goes to Belize, then we're really in trouble for what we're going to do for FMEA.
Yeah, she's going to be happy in Belize, though.
Yeah, she's going to love Belize. So then I can look and I can say, okay, maybe I'm interested in who else might have failure modes effects. So let's just see if there's anybody else in the entire organization, all locations. So this is our expert finder. And no, Anne is our only person. So we've identified an enormous risk here.
Yeah, which I really like this expert finder thing, because maybe this person transferred departments before, maybe they had these skills at another job, and then you can start to find people that might be able to facilitate training to try to mitigate your risk then in that department. That's really
100%.
neat. Yeah.
100%. So let's back up for a second. So what we do is we find clients that are, adventurous and are looking to be early adopters for this kind of innovative tool. We are actually looking for a couple more clients, or guinea pigs, if you will, those adventurous souls. And what we want to do is help set up the required roles and their definitions so that that's an established piece, and then deploy across the department so that you actually have something robust in which a risk assessment tool is going to work. An expert finder is going to work for you. And then, to round that out and provide a meaningful tool, now suddenly hiring becomes a really facilitated process, not just for HR and recruitment, but for the managers themselves and what they really need to be looking for, which is different from a lot of the job descriptions, which I think a lot of people use for job advertisements, which don't truly hit the mark. They're old, they, million points in terms of the, million bullet points in terms of what the skills are that are required, sometimes redundant, written years ago, haven't been updated, can be really, sort of messy and cumbersome in terms of converting to a job advertisement. And, right now, with 1 million open jobs, we kind of need to have something that's going to appeal to people and hit the mark, so that you're scooping in that talented group that actually can do the job,
Yeah. Well, and that talented group can be comprised of so many different types of individuals.
Good point.
And the fact, like we were talking about, the great resignation is becoming the great regret, is because of instances where these companies haven't really perhaps had the most updated versions of their job descriptions, and even the hiring managers or whoever was in charge of showing them around and interviewing them had possibly, I don't want to say it's for sure, but possibly, just possibly, a very unrealistic view of what the role they were hiring for did. So you have
Yeah, there's
someone coming
that.
in
Mhm.
and they have a very different set of expectations, and they find out quite quickly that yeah, there's no growing to do what you thought you were going to do. You're going to do this. It's completely not what you were hired for. um, and then they have that
Yeah.
regret from jumping through industries or to new careers. But then the other one too that I just thought of, it's that generation of very young people, and I hope some of them are watching this and sharing it with their friends. There's a huge interest in IT and computers, hardware, and programming.
Mhm.
And I firmly believe that most of those people don't know of the rewarding career they might find elsewhere, because the mindset that they have, that it's had them fall in love with computers and IT. Now, this applies to other areas too, but it speaks to my personal background. As you know, I started in computer sciences and fell in love with manufacturing.
Yeah.
And it's such a rewarding career. Everything that you love about computers. Anyway, I don't want to get too sidetracked on that, but
I'll just say that you've essentially identified what a transferable skill looks like. So even though you feel like you're sidetracked, I think actually it's quite in the wheelhouse of our conversation.
yeah.
I love that you want to appeal to the younger people that are, wondering about their lives and how they're going to get, make their mark. And what I think is interesting about the tool itself is that not only do you enter in with the role, and we know that it's actually more common for people to enter into roles that is where their education pointed, but then actually at the end of their lives, they've made quite a few zigs and zags. Like you might
Mhm.
start in aerospace, but you end up in distribution in a warehouse. And that's quite common. And, I started in mechanical engineering technology, and I entered out of school. I entered immediately into civil and construction and, was doing miscellaneous metals takeoffs and the like. Um, and then entered into distribution for metals. So, you see that there's these progressions in people's lives that can be very good and informative, but can also just point to the fact that transferable skills are kind of what you're after in this world. And the other piece, of course, is we don't want people to feel that they've signed up for a role that isn't actually what they expected. And I
Mhm.
do think that that's the great regret. That is what signifies the great regret. And I don't think it's intentional on any recruiter's part or any HR department. And it's certainly not the intent of a potential recruit to just accept something at face value and not realize that there might be more to this role. There's naivety on every front.
Yeah.
And so I do think something like this can help hone what it is exactly we're looking for and how to eliminate that sort of surprise of, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. That's one thing to look at, but it's also how to set expectations within the roles once people are in the facility and in the organization. And that's super important. And I think a struggle for any role. And so, those clearly defined roles, clearly defined skills, and really nice graduation between the levels is key. And that's what I work really hard. And, my partner and I work really hard to create the right scenarios so that the organizations find this to be a useful tool.
Yeah.
And that is how it benefits them. It's not just internal, although that's huge. It's also how to recruit, which is a huge challenge right now.
Yeah. So I'd like to look at that. We were looking at it earlier and I want to go over it. So you've got the layout page for the employee that they would kind of see when they come in. But then
Mhm.
the other tool that I thought was really, really cool, and some people might be seeing it there below Expert Finder, is Career Path. So when
Nice.
we're talking to anyone, their first time entering that area or that company, the most common thing I know myself I've wondered about is, okay, but how do I grow to the next level, or how do I get to this end department? Because I'm starting in this department, but I know I want to work towards that department. um, I think it's just such a beautiful tool for a company that has gone through the work to outline the skills necessary. Then you can use your system here and suddenly you've got this massive highlight. Okay, you really want to go from drafter to engineering manager. This is the two skills that you're currently lacking on your skill sheet, or you're on your matrix, that you need to do.
Yeah. And you're already qualified. Now, this, of course, anybody that's actually in these fields knows that this is unlikely. I'm just, again, the sandbox. So right now, to go from a drafter to an engineering manager, it's got welding qualification. Of course, there would be leadership qualifications, competencies, there would be FMEA, there would be GD&T, there would be all kinds of people leadership aspects. But what this is meant to show you is, okay, if we're going to set this up for any one individual company, what's going to happen is Darsh could say, okay, I'm a drafter right now, and I'm really interested in how many skills are needed that I don't already have for the engineering manager role. And so what would pop here is what are the gaps? And down here is, what do you already have? And you might see that in the gaps, there's an internal certification, there's some internal training that you can avail yourself to and start adding that to your profile. And you can see what the education path might be and talk to HR, talk to your manager about how might you build toward this goal. And now, your manager no longer has a retention issue, they have an opportunity. And so that's where we really saw the career path as a career mapping device that can show, do I want to change? Do I want to make a lateral move? Maybe a quality inspector would like to become part of an engineering team of some kind. Perhaps they want to go into, the manufacturing engineering group. Or maybe you've got like another kind of skilled person who's a newcomer, who is an electrician. And we actually, maybe the company needs somebody with electrical background to understand certain aspects of the design, and they're capable. Well, you can find them that way in the expert finder, right? And so that person could also be looking and saying, okay, it looks like I actually might be able to get my foot in the door in the engineering department here.
Yeah.
So
it just looks like such a boon to manufacturing, to management of employees. I know, like you were talking about that euphoria that comes when you first set up your first spreadsheet and you're like, yeah, and I've been the one in charge of updating those. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff that comes into that. It's not just assessing, okay, who's grown or who needs to update, but we would also sit down and redesign the matrices or matrices, whatever that word is. But we would not only change all the boxes that are checked, but we would change everything that's neat, and just rebuilding an entire spreadsheet outside of even the formatting nuances, because I mean, this looks beautiful. My spreadsheets did not, but it was just all of that and the amount of time it would take, because inevitably some contingents or discussion would need to take place, and it would keep getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And suddenly updating every 12 months becomes, maybe every 18 to 24 it gets updated. And that's really wasn't fair to the employees at the time either, or to me as the one who was like, I really want to update this, but stuff keeps landing on my plate.
Well, I would just congratulate you on the fact that you even considered the employees, because quite often they don't get to see that kind of matrix. They don't even know it exists. So it becomes this very siloed thing when a manager is trying to operate. And then the redesign is kind of how you just stay interested in the work. You're like, oh, this is horrible. At least I can change it up a little bit. And now suddenly there's tremendous inconsistency with the metrics. You know what I love about this design that we built, that, I have a really brilliant programmer partner that's helped me. But one of the things we really wanted to be able to do was, quite often in a yearly review, you get a goal setting component in which you're like, okay, so we know that the projects are XYZ this year. So I know that my skills need to be the following things.
Yeah. And
so I project that in 3 months I'll be done this, and in 12 months I'll be done this. And part of my goals is to, finish this project by X. So then everybody, that all sounds really great. And then a pandemic hits, and suddenly your whole existence shifts, but everybody's forgotten about your annual review. Like nobody's paying attention to that in a crisis. And so now you've lost, you all had to shift gears. You all had to go from, we're going to produce wine to now we're going to produce hand sanitizer. Yeah. So now suddenly there's a whole new skill set that gets adopted. Everybody learns this thing. It's something that's actually valuable to the organization, provides diversity and innovation sort of understanding to the teams that decided to do this, right? And gets lost. Well, the skills matrix can capture that. And
Mhm.
you can look back into the data and see that shifted goal across time. And suddenly you're like, oh yeah, that's what happened. The goalposts moved. And you no longer have this sort of meaningless goal that, you know, was set back in January. Now you've got like, oh, here's what happened. Here's what we did. Here are the skills I learned. Of course, that got put down while we, you know, managed a pandemic.
Mhm.
Of course, that goal originally went away. We even lost the order or something. And then
Yeah.
now we're on this new track, but you can still demonstrate as an employee that you have gained skills and developed yourself in the interests of the organization.
Which, I mean, yes, in the organization, but also for the self. We were talking about the autonomy of being able to
Yeah.
monitor your own training and development, and then that sense of satisfaction that comes from being able to know that you're actually progressing. And then it looks like you've got tons of tracking built into this, so you
Yes.
can even look at your own, okay, in the last 6 months, you know, in my head I've been super busy, I've been working on stuff. One, did I miss capturing any training I've done? Because maybe, you know, you did training and you don't even realize. Or two, okay, there's nothing missed, nothing captured, I got swamped with projects. I really need to make sure in the next 6 months I do something, because you've got a personal target, or perhaps a corporate target, a business side target of 5 growth opportunities a year, or 1 growth opportunity a year, or whatever it is. You've got that continuous training that you've dedicated to, or maybe you're knocking off skills for this, for the career path, right? Whatever it is, you can kind of log in to say, okay, and just have that time to reflect
Yep,
and be honest.
exactly. So, you know, if you've read any of Dan Pink's works, he wrote a book in 2009 called Drive. And within it, he identified that motivation, personal motivation, can be fostered with three, it sort of has 3 pillars. One is purpose. So it's like in having an altruistic aim. When
Mhm.
you're at work, and no matter knowledge worker or person, you know, assembly shop floor, there it helps to have some form of aim that might be deeply about putting your kids through school. But it could also be about, you know, this company produces something that is meaningful to the world.
Mhm.
It could be a sustainability endeavor. It could be something in terms of, you know, that just aligns to who you are. Perhaps you're like a master craftsman in a certain area, and this thing has just been your passion your whole life. So purpose can be very, very personal and very, you know, very specific. Um, the other two, though, are mastery and autonomy. And so my focus in the design of the skills matrix was to ensure that there's autonomy, that people own their growth and that they can see their progress, and mastery, that they can see that they're improving. And that is so important to somebody in terms of how they feel about their job, how they feel about the value they offer an organization. People want to be valuable, right? And so you can say, look, you gave me these core skills and I have grown inside those core skills, and I bring a better product to you after 6 months than when I started. And here's the proof. And, you know, knowing that is a really important thing.
Because I do want to be mindful of the time. I think this is a great place to kind of tie up the conversation.
Great.
It's just that honest belief that people want to do the best they can for their lives. They want to get that sense of accomplishment, like you were sharing about from the works. And I haven't read specifically Dan Pink, but I have read a lot of other training and development stuff, and they all seem to touch on those core principles.
Mhm.
Um, as human beings, some people call it like nurturing your soul. There's a bunch of different terminology that's all around it, but it
Yeah.
all comes down to seeing growth, being challenged, overcoming adversity, and continuing, right? And you get that
Right.
time to revel in it, which is that beautiful part about the reflection that your solution provides. You can be like, oh wow, look at everything I did in the last 12 months, you know, I really got a lot done. Or, oh, okay, you know, I haven't got as much as I'd like, so now I know where to target. Not to beat yourself up, but just to keep tabs on your growth.
Growth
um,
mindset is really important. And that is part of what we sort of designed this around, is the notion of learning. Because, you know, if you advertise in tech and you focus on learning as opposed to being a ninja or a wizard, more people will apply to jobs that underscore learning as an important value to
Yeah.
the organization than will apply to people who expect you to step in capable of taking over.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you're looking for how to fill roles and how to fill roles with the right talent, name the skills you need and focus on learning. And, you know, a learning organization is probably one of the more successful models out there for any organization, regardless of your industry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this
And
helps to underscore that, obviously. We didn't even talk about the training and how you can schedule the training within the system.
well, and
So
we can go over that in another one because I would love to
maybe.
hear more about this. It's an area I'm very passionate in. And that's one of the trends from a lot of the leading experts when it comes to hiring and everything else is focusing on that learner's mindset and hiring based on that
Mhm.
rather than how many skills they have on paper. Finding people that are motivated by that growth and that improvement is going to lead to overall satisfaction. And then software, like your solution here, it's the first I've ever seen anything like this created. And it's really exciting because then you can attract those people. They keep talking about Gen Z and how they want to see a career path so they can get that sense of accomplishment, like they're making a difference.
Yep.
And this software is that solution.
Yeah, and it helps just visually connect, like for an employee, the investment we're making in you and the possibilities for you.
Yep.
And those are things people really want to know. And you know, if you avail it to them so that they can look when they have time instead of like wondering if they're going to hear about it in a one-on-one or et cetera, then you're really fostering the whole notion that we're here for to develop you. It's an investment in the employee that they're able to demonstrate.
It
Yep.
really is. Well, thank you so much, Erin. I really appreciate your time. I hope
Thanks for you.
anyone out there, if they have questions or comments or whatever, what would be the best way? Comments below, email directly to you, DM your inbox. What would make sense?
Well, we're going to connect this on LinkedIn, right? So I think it
Yes.
would be best to reach out via LinkedIn, ask for a connection, explain that you're interested in the skills matrix.
Okay.
And we are looking for some early adopter adventurous companies that have a mix of really good high technical talent as well as labor. That's really where this thing functions at its most effective right now. And we're looking for those people that would be interested in
Okay.
trying it out. So yeah, that'd be great. Thank you so much, Arthur.
Awesome. Thanks so much.